What's going on? You're in the Beat Sessions. I'm your host, Mitchell Weary. Let's talk about this new record from Alvvays entitled Blue Rev. They released that on October 7th. This is the band's third studio album and their follow-up to 2017's Anti-Socialites. And it's been just a little over 5 years since this outfit dropped that record on us. And this new album, Blue Rev, is worth every second that we had to wait for it. Very excited to talk about this band, talk about this album. That album cover is hilarious too. Rev, if you're not familiar with it, is a vodka cola drink that is licensed and sold exclusively in Canada. Those three look like they probably had a few before they took that picture. It's pretty funny. But you talk about Alvvays just blowing up from the moment they dropped their self-titled debut back in 2014. Anti-Socialites, an amazing album 3 years later. And Molly Rankin and co. were pretty much ready to go to work on this new album after doing an extensive tour to support Anti-Socialites. But life happens. A bunch of stuff got in the way, including COVID. I know that some dirtbag broke into Molly Rankin's apartment, stole a bunch of demos, and I think literally the next day there was a flood in a basement where a bunch of their equipment was stored, threatened to destroy a lot of that. So they had to deal with that, and then I know that they're based out of Toronto currently, so having to work back and forth between international borders. Their new bass player, Abby Blackwell, I believe is based out of Seattle. I know she resides stateside. So that, as far as Canada's protocol and the US protocol, certainly creating problems getting together and making this record happen. But they were finally able to reconvene in October of 2021 with Sean Everett. And the energy of this record is just outstanding because of those sessions, I'd argue. They recorded this thing basically in two full takes, like about 15 to 20-second breaks in between tracks, and then a 30-minute break in between recording the album in its entirety. And that energy, in my opinion, just pours off this album. That, and there's so many other factors that I truly think make Alvvays really at the top of their game when it comes to this indie pop dynamic, which always makes me laugh. It's two genres where I feel like both sides are like, no, don't bring us together. But it's when done correctly, it's an amazing genre. And there's so much out there right now that I love. I think of bands like Snail Mail, think of Soccer Mommy, you think of Mitski, and we were talking about Beach Bunny recently, but very much grounded in the tradition of jangle pop. I think most visibly, a lot of people probably think of the Byrds, but even earlier, you think of outfits like the Everly Brothers or the Searchers. It's a great genre. It's a wonderful sound, and I love the contemporary feel that these bands are working with while taking such a classic song and making it just so fresh and so much fun. But when it comes to Molly and her lyrics, there's something about her. I think Mitski's great. Snail Mail, Soccer Mommy, lyrically are phenomenal. I think that their perspectives are outstanding. But there's just something about the way that Molly presents the world that I just appreciate more. It's a matter of taste. It's entirely subjective. It'd certainly be fun to have a debate in the comments section on which one of those artists is your favorite songwriter, because they're all fantastic. And I think they all, really present a phenomenal, honest, and just a true image of what the world is like, and especially their perspective of the world, how they relate to it. But I just find myself really identifying with Molly, and I'm loving the songwriting on this particular record too. Alec O'Hanley and then Carrie McLellan, I believe is how you pronounce her name. They've been there, through thick and thin through this whole thing as well. So that consistency, certainly a big part of what makes the songwriting so good, in my opinion. Alec is exceptional. It's pretty much, him and Molly at the helm as far as the songwriting is concerned. But, the music, it's so dynamic. There's just a great garage rock element to it. You talk about that jangle pop element as well. Elements of shoegaze. There's moments where you just get a good alternative rock and roll feel. Lots of good guitar work, great production. The production's fun on this album. The songs, a lot of them they're just fun, unique territory for being pretty much just straight and roll rock and roll songs. It's great the way that just nuanced variance adds a lot of life and a lot of breath to these songs and makes them a ton of fun to listen to. I would say my only criticism, I love Molly's voice. I love it on this record from a production standpoint. And, maybe it's just because it falls in with the shoegaze element. There's a lot of, think of My Bloody Valentine as far as the inspiration for this record. And I know the album Loveless, the vocals more often than not, I know like aesthetically, I know they're designed to be buried a little bit, but I just wish that Molly's vocals in some of these songs shined a little more, because I think lyrically she's stunning, musically her voice is stunning, and she talks about matter of taste here as well. She talks about how no matter what sound they're going for, the most fundamental thing, the most important thing with the song is the melody and the music that's there. Nothing else really supersedes that, and you can tell that about their music. There's stuff that's very pop driven. There's stuff that's very alternatively driven, and I love the dynamic that exists on this record. 14 songs in 39 minutes too. There's no filler on this thing. I mean, they just hit the ground running, and this thing just from start to finish is phenomenal. I love this record. Kicks off with Pharmacist. I know that was a single. You know how I roll. I try not to listen to that. I like listening to a record in its entirety, but bright lyrical element with I love the up-tempo alternative rock and shoegaze feel of the song. Nice solo to finish. Great way to lead this album off. I certainly understand why that was a track that they released as a single. Easy on Your Own, your second track. Light synth, a little bit of feedback to open up this thing. I like the lo-fi elements that are at work here. Love the vocal hook that brings in the song too. Just a really fun track. It's got a bit of there's another thing that I felt strongly on this record, and it's very subtle, but as far as the guitar work, I hear a lot of a band like Sonic Youth. And that's really that combination with the jangle pop and just the pop in general. That dynamic makes this record so unique and so much fun. After the Earthquake, your third track, great opening riff, more of a college rock feel, more of that jangle rock pop feel as well. So think of I think of REM, maybe even like the New Pornographers, more of like a contemporary feel to the song. But I love the vocal breakdown on this track. I think the way that the energy picks back up to finish is great as well. It's really a fun song. Kicks into your fourth track, Tom Verlaine, mellow open. Giving a shout out to our television frontman that gives way to a mid-tempo shoegazy feel, a romantic song. I like the way that it finishes with the line about Tom Verlaine. It's a great track. I like the way that it kind of mellows things out at that point in the record. Pressed is your fifth song. Picks up the tempo coming off of Tom Verlaine and rocks immediately. There's a lot of intros to these songs. I would say if I had another criticism maybe is that some of the intros I feel like they don't really line up with the music. They almost just kind of feel like they're there and then the song starts. Feel like maybe the song could just go to work, but it's so minute. Like I said, I love this record. I think it's beautiful. Every single one of these songs is just a banger, frankly. I love it. Pressed, we're talking about how it's picking up the tempo, rocks immediately. It's got this frenzied urgency too. I really like the energy of this song. Again, coming off the mellowness of Tom Verlaine. Many Mirrors, your sixth track. Light synth gives way to just this light, breezy indie track. Really great dynamic. Nice change of pace as well. Dig the guitars. The guitar work on these songs really quite phenomenal, especially the solo. And there's a great transition between this and Very Online Guy. I love the funky groove in the bass on this track. Abby, nice work here. Reverb in the vocal. Track has this great psychedelic feel too. It's really a lot of fun. Velveteen, your eighth song. Vocal at the center of this, very atmospheric intro. And I love the way that this song kicks in. I dig the change. There's this really nice breakdown that, and then the coda just soars. That's another thing too. Structurally, there's a lot that seems kind of similar, but it hits so right and it feels so good that even those moments where it might seem slightly mundane, it just doesn't matter because you're loving what you're feeling and what you're hearing. Tile by Tile is your ninth song, ushered in by many keys that evolve into this mellow, atmospheric mid-tempo track. Draws on a lot of pop, a bit of maybe a yacht rock feel to this track as well. It's kind of interesting, but it's such a lovely track. Phenomenal melodies. It's arguably my favorite. I really dig it. Pomeranian Spinster. Kind of a funny song title. Great hard rock and energy, right out of the gate. It's got kind of a punk rock feel actually, but there's organ driven breakdown that makes the track very interesting, very unique. It's pretty mellow, and then rocking out in the coda. Belinda Says, a little shout out to Belinda Carlisle, who's one of my favorites. Honestly, my first rock and roll crush. I absolutely love Belinda Carlisle. Light synth opens into the rocker. I love Molly's voice on this song. It really stands out a bit more on this track. I like the production on this particular track, especially in the breakdown, and especially with the hot lyric. Belinda says that heaven is a place on earth, and then she finishes, well, so is hell. It's pretty hard, and that's just the type of realness that I love about Molly. And I hate to pick on Beach Bunny, but great artist. That new record is phenomenal, but you get more of this element lyrically that's kind of personal, kind of Dear Diary, where Belinda, even if she's looking at something personally, it's still, that's just a lens. I mean, she really just has a way of saying things that I mean, if you know that song, it's hard for that line not to resonate with anybody. I think it's such a good line. I freaking love it. Bored in Bristol is your 12th track. Dig the percussion on this thing, the way it evolves. This song builds nicely. It's got a big pop feel as well. Your 13th track, Lottery Noises, great penultimate track. Minimal vocal driven, just a very pretty organic build in the song. And again, Molly's voice really allowed to shine in this track. I love the production there. Great chorus. I love the melody, the hook. Just a wonderful alternative feel and a nice way to bring in your closing track, Fourth Figure, which is pretty hot. It's just a pretty short, let's just call it a ballad, but it's nicely done. It's got this cinematic classic pop feel. Nice way to shut this thing down. An amazing record. Wonderful rock and roll energy from start to finish. If you were excited for this band to drop this new record, I think that, if you haven't listened to it already, check this thing out. It's going to exceed expectations, and rightfully so. Could very easily end up on the top 10 list for sure. We're going to give it a vinyl please, though, for the moment. Hope you find this review helpful. Hope you enjoyed listening to this record as well. Please like this video, share it, subscribe to the channel, do all the things to help us blow this project up in 2022, and stay tuned throughout the week for more album reviews. We will see you next time on the Beat Sessions.